So I've been spending a lot of time lately thinking about how or why I became an engineer. Really about just, what led me to this place that I've ended up in my life. I was the kid that, took things apart to see how they worked and usually put them back together, right? And they still worked mostly. I was the kid that watched Mr. Wizard every day. I was the kid that watched 321 Contact. And most importantly, I was the kid that read Popular Science magazine. I loved Popular Science magazine. This one here is from June of 1987, when I was but a young lad. And, at that time in my life, that magazine meant a lot to me. I read it cover to cover every month. I was excited every time it came in the mail. I read it multiple times. And, when I was home recently visiting my mom, I found 3-ish years worth of my Popular Science magazines from the late 80s and early 90s. And as I was, looking at them and going through them, it's like I remembered so much from these magazines, and they were a really big influence on me. I think they're a big reason as to why I became an engineer. And honestly, I still like reading them, even going back in time and reading them. And it's a lot of fun to go look at them and kind of see what happened to the technology they were talking about at the time. So I thought it might be fun to sit and go through some of these magazines as a video and kind of talk through and look at the stuff that was in it and what it meant to me at the time, maybe if I can think of it, and maybe a discussion on what happened to these technologies and things they were talking about at the time. I'll probably end up doing more videos on this kind of stuff about just, how a person becomes an engineer, what leads you to that, what influences people. And, maybe it'll help me figure out a little bit more about, how I ended up where I am and maybe explain a little bit of, what it takes to become an engineer to anybody that might be interested. So let's go look at a 40-year-old magazine.
So I chose this magazine because, as an adult, when I would think back to my Popular Science magazines, and I would actually think back to them quite a bit, for some reason this cover with these tools frozen in a block of ice, it was something I always remembered, and something, I guess, it was just very visually appealing to me at the time. I don't know. So like I said before, this is from June of 1987, so it's a long time ago. So let's go ahead and get started. We've got our Chevy truck ad here because, this was the heyday of the truck wars. And we're going to look at articles about frozen tools. That was the cover. The world's biggest machine. We're going to talk about that. And then we'll just kind of keep going through. We've got reader forum, comeback, lots of cigarette ads. This was the 80s. Cigarette ads were everywhere. I guess we knew it was dangerous, but we still did it anyway. The Chevy Corsica, I remember this car. This was a kind of a cool car back in the day. Now it looks, very 80s. There's an article about how we discovered that Pluto was smaller than we thought it was. This was also back whenever we called Pluto a planet. Now it's not anymore. R.I.P. Pluto. And I remember when these came out, these were, the Honda scooter that was kind of a motorcycle for somebody that didn't really want to learn how to ride a motorcycle. I think they even had an automatic transmission. And then here's a little section I cut out. I went and looked, and all these magazines are available on the Internet Archive. I went and looked, and this was actually a picture of a Porsche that I had cut out. I guess I really liked it. And check out this Chevy Blazer concept. Kind of looks like a minivan. If you look here at the instrument panel and the steering wheel, it's kind of like the steering wheel on the new Teslas. It's not round, it's that oblong shape. More futuristic looking, I guess. More trucks. Did I mention there were a lot of trucks back then? Ads. Trucks. An article about Porsche deciding to be a part of the IndyCar race series. Obviously, they're really big in the Formula One and other racing series. And this here article, this is kind of like when this concept of like the superbike motorcycles, like I think was really taking off. Putting 130 horsepower in a small motorcycle that doesn't weigh much. That can do over 100 miles an hour very quickly. And then this is new technology, which they always talked about new technology in this magazine, and I always kind of like to see, now as I go back, I like to see what happened to these things. So this is an optical fiber gyro. And it's different from, the old style gyroscope with the spinning thing on the inside. It used, I don't know exactly how it worked, but it used basically a spool of fiber optic wire, and they would basically have 3 of them on top of each other, and I guess each one of them would kind of figure out where you're at on XYZ axis, and it was a lot better, no real moving parts. They actually used these today. They still use these instead of the spinning gyroscopes. So this actually did take off, even though at this point in time it called it a prototype. Trucks, Ford truck, Dodge Dakota, Jeep truck. That's interesting. Haven't seen a Jeep truck like that in a long time. I mean, they have that new thing that kind of looks like a half Jeep, half truck. Clean your engine, just in case you want to clean your engine. It's something people do. I don't. And they always had these little, things at the end, of how the trucks or how whatever they were comparing, how they compare to each other. Look here, 0 to 60 in 11.1 seconds, up to 13.1 seconds. That's so slow for modern standards. It's amazing the amount of horsepower and performance that we have available to us today compared to back then. This net horsepower, 160 horsepower, 125 horsepower, 173 horsepower. Like the cheapest car now has like over 200 horsepower, it seems. It's not hard to get cars with 300 or 400 horsepower these days. It's pretty amazing with the way the technology has changed. And then this, like I said, I went and looked in the Internet Archive. I cut out a picture of a desktop computer for some reason. I don't think I had a desktop computer at this point in my life. I think it was later that I got one of those. And more cigarette ads. And here's a trained to be a computer repair expert back when you used to be able to repair your own computers. I guess you still can if you build them yourself, unless you're a Mac guy. They always had in this magazine you could write in and ask questions about how to fix your car. Because if you think about it, like you could either get a Haynes manual back then, or you could go talk to your friend, or maybe you have a friend that's a mechanic, but you couldn't go to the internet. There weren't YouTube videos. You were kind of on your own to figure out how to fix things back then. I think technology now has really opened it up. Like if you're willing to go get your hands dirty and go try to figure something out, like you have a lot of options in how to fix your own things now, and you have access to so much information. You just have to be careful what you trust, of course. CB radio. Everybody had a CB radio in their car or truck. Back in the 70s and 80s, we had one in my dad's pickup truck. I used to love listening to the truckers talk on the radio. And then look at this new cordless screwdriver from Skill. This is all Father's Day and graduation gift. So it's a CB radio. It's a portable CD radio, which is kind of cool. I guess they're all portable, but this one seems pretty small and easy to carry around. This little Honda generator. Oh, and this. So this was an idea to protect cars in transit, and they would put this water-soluble polymer, clear polymer, on the outside of the car to protect it from road things and dirt and debris. And when it would get to wherever it was going, they would spray it down with water and wash the polymer off. And while this didn't catch on for cars because it's just kind of annoying, and rain and the such for travel, there is a place where this polymer is currently used. And if you guessed Tide Pods or dishwasher pods, you were correct. This is the same plastic that is in those that you put into your dishwasher or your washing machine. It dissolves into something supposedly non-toxic. I think there's some issues where certain water treatment centers don't have the right bacteria, or it's not exposed long enough to where maybe it does stay in the water, but it's definitely something that can be dealt with if we're careful about it. This is not microplastics, that's different. But I just thought that was interesting that, while a lot of these technologies, they were kind of an interesting idea at the time, and if you really think about it, this seems like a kind of a weird idea to do to a whole car. The concept of a kind of a one-time use plastic is pretty interesting. And here's, an ad for campers. Camping was very popular back then. We had a pop-up camper like this. We would go every year. It was a lot of fun. Now we have here an ad for Slick 50 in a tin can, apparently. So I remember these ads back in the day. They would run a car. They would say we ran a car with no oil for like 50 miles and it's completely fine. Really what this was it was Teflon, essentially. It was taking advantage of the craze of Teflon and nonstick skillets and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it didn't work. It didn't do what it said it would do. It gummed things up. Teflon doesn't just like coat metal if you pour on it like paint. It's a very complicated bonding process to get Teflon to actually like coat something and then be friction free. And then Teflon doesn't like repeated metal scraping back and forth over it. It's just, this was a bad idea. There was another competitor to this that I can't remember what it is. I think it's in this magazine too, but this was a bad idea. But they sold this for a while. I don't know that they still sell it, but I mean, this was expensive. This was $40 back in 1987, for a quart of this stuff. $40 in 1987, that's like $60 or $70 now. Like, that's an expensive, treatment for your car. Here's a review of an RV, and check it out. You put your little 80s car in the back of it. Army National Guard. They've always been advertising with the National Guard. GI Bill, money for college, all that kind of stuff. The ads really haven't changed. Jeep Cherokee, which was still an AMC company at the time before they got, I think they got bought by Chrysler at some point in time. But this Cherokee still looks very similar to the Cherokees now. A little bit boxier, a little smaller. But I remember when this came out, thought they were pretty cool. Cigarette ad. Don't smoke. It's not good for you. Here's an article here that talks about the Challenger tragedy, and this university professor that saw a wind shear kind of buffet against the Challenger, like right before the explosion, and it really wasn't an accepted idea that played a part into it at the time, because they were very focused on the O-rings and all that kind of stuff. But it did turn out that he was right. The wind shear did actually place extra stress on the boosters that exacerbated the problem. Obviously, everybody focuses on the O-rings, right? No big problem like that. You can never just point to one little teeny tiny flaw, right? It wasn't just the O-rings. It was the O-rings, and combined with the design that they had to go with for that actual joint, because they needed to be able to disassemble it so that they could reuse them, so they could transport them. I mean, all those things, you make concessions as an engineer on how you try to make things work. Obviously, this turned out to not be the best idea at reduced temperatures. Other than that, it seemed like it worked, but the temperatures combined with the joint, combined with probably this wind shear, right? It's a very complex problem, very complex machine, and unfortunately it led to that tragedy. We can talk more about the culture of NASA and all sorts of other things that led them to make that decision, but that's for another discussion. Here's this cool thing. This is pre-GPS, right? We didn't have access to the military GPS satellites at the time, right? So this was an article about a nav system in a car that had motion sensors and kind of updated your position as to where you are, like on a CRT screen, like an old TV screen in the car. Probably very expensive, probably didn't work that well, but interesting idea that led to, where we're at now, where you can't go anywhere without a GPS anymore. And then here, laser sight. This is an article about the new technology to use lasers to do eye surgery to correct vision. That seems pretty ubiquitous now. I had it done a few years back. I wear glasses again, but way lower prescription than I used to. Pretty cool technology, but this was cutting edge at this point in time. It was brand new. This is a very interesting thing to me, because for the longest time, I remember this article, I remember reading this article, and for the longest time I just assumed my memories of this article that this was talking about the LHC in Europe. And it's really not. They were talking about building this giant super collider in Texas. And Congress actually did approve this, and we spent a couple of $1 billion on it before it was ultimately canceled in favor actually of funding the International Space Station. I think that's what they actually funded it for, what they actually were choosing between the two in the early 90s, when we were really trying to cut back on what we were spending. But this one's really interesting because this was very far ahead of when they built the LHC. Right, so Large Hadron Collider, found the Higgs boson, just a couple of years ago. This was back in the late 80s, right? So had they finished this and built this and finished it maybe in the mid 90s or late 90s, and this was quite a bit bigger than the LHC would have been. It's interesting to think that had we finished this and built it, we would have discovered the Higgs boson and many other things potentially in Texas in maybe 1998 or 2000, long before, this area in Texas would have been the forefront of particle physics. And it's a shame that we didn't do that. We used to build big, huge things. We used to do it. Cold War era, right? Want to be cutting edge, want to be ahead of the Soviet Union, all that kind of stuff. Space program, all those things. A lot of them have military things too, but a lot of it was also just wanting to be the biggest, best, first at things, and kind of lead the way and be that gold standard for things. And at the time, including science, we've kind of lost that, which is kind of sad. I think that's why we don't have fusion power yet. I think that's why we don't have a lot of things. I understand we have to not just spend, but I think there's a a balance that we're probably on the wrong side of. Things like this don't get funded without governments doing it. You don't know what you're going to get from it, right? So no company's going to decide to go spend the billions or whatever it's going to cost, in today's money to go do something that they don't know what the return on investment is. Sometimes the return on investment is just an understanding of the universe, and then you go figure out new things out of that. It's kind of sad, but here it is. Yeah, so this thing was supposed to be a 54-mile long circuit. To compare, the LHC is about 17 miles, right? So significantly bigger, significantly higher energies created, higher speeds created. I don't know, it just would have been pretty cool. Now it's just I think a flooded tunnel. Here it is compared to how big, Manhattan Island. It was going to be bigger than Manhattan Island. It's amazing. We used to really think big. I just don't think we do that anymore. And here was an idea at a new molecular memory data storage kind of thing. This was one of those kind of bridging ideas to have more memory and a more compact thing that maybe lasts longer. This is at the time of, yeah, we had CDs, but they didn't store a whole lot at the time. We didn't have solid state drives yet. We didn't have any of those, drives yet. I think my first computer that I got in like 1992, 1993 came with a 90 or 70 megabyte hard drive, right? So that's what we're talking about at this time, right? This worked, but obviously it didn't catch on. It seems overly complicated, and we just found better ways to do things. Like so many things, right? Something wins out. Here's the cover story about frozen tools and cryogenically treating tools. Basically, the whole thing here was, and this was cutting edge at the time. They weren't even sure if this was real, if it worked. Their results were kind of hit or miss. And basically, what they were doing is they're taking steel tools, slowly cooling them down to negative 300 degrees, and then letting them come back. And they thought at the time that it was doing something to the molecular structure to make them stronger, last longer, that kind of stuff. And as I read through this article, the jury was still kind of out on it. They didn't really know what was going on, and they couldn't see, right? We didn't have the same type of imaging then as we have now. Turns out they were right. Turns out this does work. It's an expensive process. It is used in certain practices, but it's not that common. Digital sound speakers, smart circuits revolutionizing auto wiring. This is kind of at the forefront of, cars having 37 computers, getting rid of like really overly complicated wiring harnesses, and now just having almost overly complicated wiring harnesses. If you ever tried to troubleshoot electrical problems in a car, you know what I'm talking about. But really the whole goal here was to try to connect things with less copper, trying to use fiber optics, trying to minimize big computers so that like local problems wouldn't affect everything. It's really at the forefront of that, right? That's how cars kind of work now, right? You do have a big main brain computer, but there's all these little modules and everything that, the module tends to fail before the main computer whenever you have a problem. It's interesting. Again, this is the start of that. If you look here, right, you have all the electronics, right? The electronic throttle, electronic anti-lock brakes, wheel speed sensors, a seat motor. They talk about it here like, look how complicated this car is, and this car is like nothing compared to what a modern car is, where we've got TV screens and GPSs and internets and just everything, satellite radio, take your pick, sensors everywhere, airbags everywhere. The modern car is so complicated. If we hadn't started with this type of technology, we never would have been able to have cars now, for good or bad. I think they're overly complicated now and tend to lead to distractions. Can I have some buttons in my car again, please? I absolutely hate the touch screens. Right here, initially, right, engine computer controls everything. Here, right, the computer controls the suspension, the ABS module, the steering, right, separate things for separate systems. This is how big, complicated things work in general, right? You do it a little bit more localized. They like to have a lot of articles about like houses and buildings in here. I never really found them interesting, and I still don't now. I don't know why. I live in a house, but it's just not that interesting to me. They would have these DIY things, and build a terrarium on the end of your house. I guess you break out a window and poke a hole in the side of your house. I don't know. I guess people did it. Popular Mechanics had a lot of stuff like this too, and I think these were made by the same people, so that just kind of might be a crossover from Popular Mechanic. Here's an article about the Acura Legend Coupe and how it was kind of taking a run at BMW and Mercedes. Right, Acuras were relatively new, at least in America at the time. I think they had been in Japan for a lot longer. Right, they were just a up brand or upmarket version of Honda. Very nice, the Acura Legend. I remember when this came out, it seemed like a really cool car. Right, it has that Mercedes kind of look to it from from the era, and they were really taking a run at them and making them get better. I like how the Japanese companies forced everybody to get better. This cutout was for some reason a picture of this canoe. I don't know why I cut it out. I'm not really a boat or a canoe person, and I really wasn't back then. If you want to build your own canoe, go to the Internet Archive and find this magazine, and they'll give you the blueprints for building your canoe. And then what's new? This was always my favorite part of the magazine because this was new, the new technology. Luxury off-roader, the Range Rover. Everybody loves a Range Rover. They were really cool cars back then. They're really cool cars now. They were real off-road vehicles back then that were also luxury. They were very expensive. This thing was $31,000 in 1987. That was a lot of money for a car back then. Some binoculars with a built-in radio for when you go to watch ball game or the horse races, it says, because it's a normal activity that everybody does. This one's kind of interesting. They still talk about this, and it might maybe come to fruition someday. So, but this is a solar cell that you can see through, right? So you can kind of, the goal was to make windows and skylights and that kind of stuff out of solar cells. But part of the problem with that is if it's letting light pass through, then it's not creating as much electricity because it needs that light and the heat from the light to pass through, the energy from the sun, right? So these are only so efficient. They're significantly less efficient than a solar panel. Seems like a very expensive way to make probably not nearly as much electricity as just putting solar panels on a roof. I can see maybe this if you really want to spend the money and do it on a giant building or something like that if the cost came down, but this is something I see in the news every so often that people are trying to do. It seems like one of those things that may or may not ever come to fruition, but it's interesting. They were talking about it as even way back then. Better way to hang your lamp. Evaporative air conditioner, no power, so it's kind of like, I guess it runs on a solar panel, so that was kind of cool to have a solar powered little air conditioning unit back that long ago. Apparently clear caulking was a new thing back then. That's interesting that they didn't have it before here. Cameras, back when cameras had film in them, because that was our only option, right? Throwaway cameras, they got really popular for a while, or you see them, one on every table at a wedding back in the day. Turn it in and you get all these weird pictures. The disposable camera was ubiquitous there for a while. SLRs, old 35 millimeter cameras, the old Polaroids, instant photo processing. For whatever reason, they decided to make it transparent so you could see what's going on in it, which doesn't seem like the best idea because cameras shouldn't be exposed to light on the inside, but I guess. Different telephoto lenses, old looking cameras that, these are kind of things you see in antique stores now. This FM signal sensor so that you can play your Walkman through your car radio. They still make these. I have a Bluetooth receiver that also will send to my car radio because I have an older car that didn't have Bluetooth. They've had these around for a while. Between this and the cool little one that you pushed into your cassette deck to play your portable CD player through your car stereo, that was kind of, how we did things back in the day. A little inverter for your car, right? You can still buy those so you can plug things in using your car battery. New cordless drill, 12-volt battery, NiCad battery. Like, battery technology has changed so much since then. This battery probably lasted like 10 minutes. Now with the new lithium batteries, with the brushless motors and cordless drills and cordless screwdrivers are absolutely amazing compared to what they were back then. They were underpowered and pretty junky back then compared to what we have now. You can actually, no professional mechanics or construction workers were using things like this back then. This was really for just use at home for small projects. Now, pretty much every job site is using battery-powered tools. I don't remember the last time I saw anybody with a corded drill. Smart remote, this new technology to have a universal remote that controls multiple items. It's funny that was new technology then. Wireless hi-fi using infrared transmitters. A TV with a built-in VCR. Look at this. This is so cool. I would have loved having this back then. Remember buying our first VCR. We had one VCR. I was lucky enough to have a TV in my room when I was a kid. It was a little black and white piece of crap, but it was still a TV in my room. I definitely played Nintendo on my black and white TV. Camcorders, back when you didn't just have a thing in your pocket that you could film things with. Electronics Book Club. It's kind of like the science nerd or DIY version of Book of the Month clubs or Columbia House, that kind of stuff. You get a compact disc player, maintenance and repair manual, or how to understand oscillators or IC circuits. This is actually pretty cool. I kind of want most of these books. Yeah, I always wanted to sign up for stuff like this, but it was expensive. Fluke still probably makes the best multimeters in town. We still use them where I work. They're kind of ubiquitous and they're expensive, but they're really good. I should have done this because I could have sent myself, apparently, I could have sent myself a letter to the year two and would have received it in the year 2000. I don't know why I would have done that, but I guess I could have sent a letter to my future self just for fun. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Vital record storage of Emporia. This seems like a scam. Kind of like buying or having a star named after you. Triple edge wipers. This was kind of a new technology back then. I remember when these came out, they were all over the place. They advertised them everywhere. I think they still make them. I think the company's still around. You know, your Bic lighter vending machine, you know, just in case you want to like have a vending machine to sell lighters. Seems like a weird ad. You know, we're getting more into the ads. I always loved the ads in this magazine. NordicTrack, OG NordicTrack. We had one of these. I remember my dad used it a lot. He actually liked it a lot. It was kind of fun. I used to use it too. It was an enjoyable way to exercise. They still make these. I don't trust them. This is a little, you take your oil plug out and put a little, screw this in, and there's a little valve on it. I don't trust that valve's not going to open while I'm driving down the road. I'll just get a wrench out and undo the oil plug twice a year. I don't know what this does for you. Here's more things about DIY stuff in your car, changing your, talking about your automatic transmission fluid and carburetors. Nobody has carburetors anymore unless you're driving a muscle car from the 60s or 70s. Give you a lot of information here. Learn to be a locksmith. You know, you want to drill a well, how to repair masonry. They still sell these. I don't think these work, but I don't know. Vanguard, I think that's actually still a company that sells like dog products. Home designs. They were always selling home designs in magazines back then, so you could, you know, mail away for it and get a design and have somebody build a house for you. I guess you didn't have to pay an architect that way. Okay, remember this is before the internet, right? You got information from magazines and books. And oh, Tough Oil. This is the other one. This was the Slick 50 competitor. Same thing, basically PTFE Teflon poured into your motor, so you can cook scrambled eggs in it or whatever. Again, didn't work. Do-it-yourself domes in case you want a dome. I always thought those geodesic domes, houses were cool. You still see them every once in a while. Satellite TV, you know, those giant satellite dishes, not these little direct TV ones. Do they still, I don't know that still even exists, but you still see these sometimes out in the real rural areas that people still have. Whether they work or not, I'm not sure. Different components for electronics, electronic motors, keyboards, joysticks. This looks like an Atari joystick. High resolution monitor, which is, you know, old CRT. The ads were fun. And here's the geodesic dome kit. Build a bike car. This was in every single one of these magazines back then. Four-wheel bike car. I don't know why. USSR uses Tesla's theories in modern warfare and weather control. Soviet scalar electromagnetic weapons. This is like the crap you read in the internet that's just garbage now. It was just in the back of magazines back then. So the same kind of people. Free hydrogen fuel, an oxygen generator, which is probably some sort of electrolysis device that just separates water that you're not going to do anything with. It was always interesting to like see these in the back and kind of. It's a jet go-kart. That's a bad idea. Don't build a jet go-kart. Your kid will die, or you will. Long distance surveillance via your telephone. That sounds illegal. Micro bugs, you know, so that you can, you know, bug people. Again, that feels illegal. Pick up a whisper 50 feet away. This is all of your stalking needs, I guess. There was a surprising amount of listening devices for sale in the back of these magazines. I don't know why. Six-wheel drive ATV. I always wanted one of these. These were so cool. I'm sure they didn't go anywhere, but I don't really know. Apparently they could float. You could take them through the water. Build your own rocket motors. Probably again a bad idea. And then these business opportunities. Probably most of these were scams just to get you to send them money. But maybe not. I don't know. I mean, this, you know, it's kind of like, you know, make $100 an hour taking surveys online. It's, you know, same thing. You know, make $400 a weekend making balloon animals. I don't think that's possible. I mean, you could probably learn how to make balloon animals. Learning how to tune a piano doesn't seem like it's a really good skill to have these days, or at least it's a skill that's not in high demand. Government seized property, just, you know, learn clowning. I loved the back of these magazines. So weird to look at now, but I read this again every month. I would read these and look through them. How to hypnotize people, magic tricks, electric trains. Witchcraft harnesses powers. I don't think that belongs in a science magazine. Pay for your hobby, get yourself a metal detector and go find tin cans. Money making opportunities, these are the best. You know, get rich, secret law smashes debts. Recover find gold from most rivers, so you go gold paying for gold. Get rich quick schemes. Win the state lotto. Booked guarantees how to improve your odds to win the state lotto. That's not a thing. Still, you know, how to not lose your hair. They've been trying to get money from people losing their hair for a long time. They still do. Just let it go. You'll be fine. And then last page, truck, 7 years, 70,000 miles. That would be a great warranty now. Nobody has a warranty like that anymore. On the back, of course, cigarettes. Men arm wrestling with cigarettes. I feel like this wasn't really a kid's magazine, but I don't know. I didn't start smoking, so it really didn't seem to work on me. I guess I wasn't susceptible to their weird cigarette ads full of burly men. Well, I hope that was as fun for you as it was for me. I really enjoyed that trip down memory lane. Really enjoyed, ever since I got these magazines back from my mom's house, kind of going through and looking at them and remember reading this. Like I said, I read these magazines a lot, and it just brings back a lot of memories, and it's fun to see, hey, what happened to these things. So if you liked this, let me know. I want to do some more of these. Like I said, this magazine was a really big influence on me and kind of, made me interested in a wide range of things. And I learned a lot reading these magazines, so it's really part of who I am. So if you like this, like I said, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.